Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome international TV journalist Elizabeth TCHOUNGUI.
Good day.
Monsieur le Président Ali Bongo Ondimba, merci d'être parmi nous ce matin. Je salue également le Premier ministre du Bénin, Yelen. Welcome to everyone. Who run the world? Girls, chante Beyoncé. On aimerait bien la croire, mais nous n'en sommes pas encore là, mais la révolution est en marche, y compris en Afrique.
The revolution is working, and here in Africa, and we have the most feminine parliament in the world, is not in a Scandinavian country, but it is in Africa, in Rwanda. We have 63% of the deputies who are women, and of course this is the proof that in terms of the equality between men and women, Africa can be the source of good practices for the rest of the world. So in Rwanda, they have taken over in the legislative branch, but in other places in Africa, we cannot invest sustainably if we do not go through the women who every day are carrying our continent. And so how can we encourage this mechanism for feminine leadership? How can we optimize this energy? And what are the initiatives, the concrete initiatives that we can somehow have a win-win situation for our women to lead them to careers in science and technology and the new digital technologies? We've got lots of women in this room, and so this session is for you. We have panelists who will be answering your questions.
English. So let's start with you, Rahama WRIGHT. Hello, welcome. You're founder and CEO of Shea, Yelen, member of President Obama's Advisory Council on Doing Business in Africa. Rainatou SOW, Executive Director of Make Every Woman Count. It's an organization that monitors and publishes an annual report as an audit of the status and conditions of women in each African country. Welcome to you, Tiguidanke CAMARA, Chairman and CEO of Tigui Mining Group, and welcome Mr. Getachew ENGIDA, Deputy Director General at UNESCO. We'll start with you and some opening remarks on education. So I don't want to hear any criticism about the fact that we start a session dedicated to women leadership and the first to speak is a man. No, it's just because everything starts with education. So please, Mr. ENGIDA.
Excellencies,
ladies,
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs,
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I would like to thank you for this invitation to take the floor before the New York Africa Forum in 2015, organized under the high patronage of His Excellency Ali Bongo Ondimba, in collaboration with the Gabonese government. This is an honor to participate in this forum in the name of UNESCO, on a subject which is at the heart of our concerns, in the heart and also at the center of Africa and also of the world, the development of leadership and feminine leadership in particular. Young people, men, women in Africa are the primary resource on the continent. And of course, this resource, the strength comes from the energy and the talent of women. And Africa has given us an example. Among these different women, we have business women who are as numerous as the men on the continent and who are launching in different growing businesses. They make up the majority of the farmers, and of course, they also are determining the stakes of property and the development of agriculture. The appropriation of Africa, of course, is a problem of Africa. It is the highest growth rate of young people in the world. And then, of course, this increase in consumption, and this, of course, will move the different sectors. And this is important for the women and the girls who are part of this growth. And of course, this represents an unexploited source of growth, and we have to insist upon their civic participation in order to realize the full potential of these women and to free up their energy, which can then contribute to the development of the continent. Dear friends,
UNESCO started the celebration of its 70th anniversary in October 2014 with a special tribute to the great leader Nelson Mandela. Just 1 year before the fourth World Conference on Women held in Beijing in 1994, President Mandela declared in his State of the Nation's Address, freedom cannot be achieved unless women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression. This vision ties together the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the 5th anniversary of the African Women's Decade 2010-2020, and the 15th anniversary of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325. In recent decades, there has been tremendous progress across the world. Maternal mortality has been cut by almost half. More and more women are active in politics. Africa boasts 14 of the world's 46 countries where women account for more than a quarter of parliamentarians. The Economist magazine estimated the increase of employment of women during the last decade has added more to the global growth than China. And yet, barriers remain. These barriers push women into the informal economy, stunt their capacity to grow their business, undermine their contribution to the economy. Girls and women are still the majority of out-of-school children, youth, and illiterate adults across the world. According to the UNESCO's Global Monitoring Report on Education for All, there are 31 million girls who should be in primary school but are not, and the number is higher for secondary school. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, if trends continue, the richest boys will achieve universal primary completion in 2021, while the poorest girls will wait until 2086. That is 71 years from now. Across the world, there remains 490 million illiterate women. Too many girls are held back because they are simply girls. They are forced to work, married off, taken away from school. Recent analysis by UNESCO shows that the school-rated gender-based violence remains far too prevalent. This situation is simply not acceptable. UNESCO's position is very, very clear. Gender equality is a human right. Gender equality is a development multiplier. Gender equality is a force for peace and stability. Education is essential here as a breakthrough strategy for human development, giving voice, encouraging civic participation, widening opportunities in the labor market. This is why gender equality and education must stand at the heart of the new Global Sustainable Development Agenda member states are shaping and will decide next month in New York. In order to get the new agenda right, we must also act on the ground. UNESCO is deeply committed to supporting the implementation of African Union Commission Strategic Plan for 2014-2017. We built priorities of this plan into the UNESCO operational strategy for Priority Africa, including the goal to mainstream the participation of women and the youth in all priorities and activities of the Union and the continent. I recall well the conference we held at UNESCO in 2012 with Dr. Zuma to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Pan-African Women's Organization. In the framework of the 70th anniversary, We will launch this year a publication on the Pan-African Women's Organization highlighting the leadership of African women. UNESCO launched with the African Union Commission an award-winning e-learning tool called Women in African History that pays tribute to the role of women in Africa's emancipation and development, drawing on the power of new technologies. Girls and women are pioneering changes across the continent and the world. In schools, in communities, in parliaments, we must recognize this and multiply it. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, UNESCO has established a regional research and documentation center for women, gender, and peace building in the Great Lakes region to prevent gender-based violence and promote women's role in peace building. In Ghana, the Gambia, Nigeria, and Liberia, UNESCO has launched a women's leadership training program. In Morocco and Tunisia, we're working to promote women's leadership with political parties. In South Sudan, UNESCO is helping the government to implement its first education strategy. In 2011, UNESCO's Director General launched the Global Partnership for Girls and Women's Education with the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and the then United States Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. With Procter & Gamble, we're promoting girls and women's literacy in Senegal and reaching 60,000 illiterate girls and women in Nigeria. With the Packard Foundation, we're targeting girls' dropout rates in secondary schools in Tanzania and in Ethiopia. We need indeed new forms of soft power, which we've talked about this morning, that bring governments and international organizations together with civil society and the private sector. This is the importance of this forum, to join governments, civil society, and the private sector to encourage and support female leaders. As change makers, as business executives, I know that each one of you understands the importance and benefits of promoting women's leadership in Africa. I'm delighted to be the only man on the podium for the first time today. As you've all noticed this morning, there wasn't a single woman in the leadership from previous panel discussions. And that needs to change from now on. I thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Believe me, it will change. Any comment, Rainatou SOW? So you watch us through your organization, Every Woman Counts. You spoke about the key point of access to education, but access to information is also a key point.
Yeah, well, I think access to information is something we have quite neglected over the years. So quite often I say when we helping women, when we're working with them, we forget that they don't know what the law in their country says, but also what the country regulates in terms of women's rights. So what is really important is, first of all, to tell them what the law in their country says about your right. And once they know their right, I'm sure they're going to do the work themselves. And for us, when we started in 2010, when the African Union launched the African Women's Decade, and the decade is about 10 years where everything will be focused on making sure that women's rights is at the top of the agenda of the African Union. So all the 55 countries committed to that. And it was a big launch in Nairobi in 2010, but after that, there was nothing else. It was quite quiet. So we thought, well, we either sit down, look at this decade passed by 10 years and no result, or we could make sure that we have a mechanism in place that could monitor and hold our government accountable about the promises they have made. So that's how we started this report, where every year we monitor every single country in Africa on education, reproductive health, economic empowerment, but women, peace and security, and see what have they done, what the promises they made, and they haven't done yet. And we send this report to women's rights on the ground so that they could lobby their government to tell them, this is what you have to be, that needs to be done, you haven't done it. And we have been doing this by using ICT, the new technology, because this is the best way to reach out women throughout the continent. And it has been really a key thing in the work we have been doing over the years, because I always believe that no matter how many good policies we have in Africa, how much money we put on the ground, if we leave half of the population behind, we're not going anywhere. So it's really important to bring women on board, whatever we are going to do.
pour améliorer aussi l'égalité femmes-hommes et l'accès aux carrières scientifiques.
In order to improve the idea of women in the sciences, it's very important also. And so you are a role model, and you have a very interesting background because you began as a top model, and now you're in the mining sector, where most women do not exist. And so how is it possible that you came to that position? What are the obstacles that you eventually met with? Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Before answering that question, I would first like to interact a little bit with the public, because I can see in the room that we have a lot of men. Well, thank you, the men, for supporting us today. But I would also like to see more women, especially more young women today, because this panel concerns women and the leadership of women. In other words, how the women are going to be able to integrate into the business sector, the private sector, and become women leaders. So today I can see that there are lots of women, and I thank you for being here. Now, for all the young women who would like to eventually have their own companies, I would say to them, yes, it's possible. Because as she has just said, I began as a top model, and beauty, everything that was involved. I decided in my career that I wanted to do more, and so I wanted to be more independent. I wanted to be able to contribute more to the women and to my country. And so I began with being a top model and now being in the mining sector. That really was a challenging experience. But it was easier for me because it was a passion. It was something I enjoyed doing, and I didn't do it by myself. I had the help of a lot of other people, especially other men who helped me. And Mr. Attias, for instance, who was one of the mentors. And he is the reason I am here today, in order to give this example. It is not age that counts, but it is your willingness. In other words, what do you want to do? So the mining sector, we said it was a world for men. But I think that there is no real gender barriers. I think if you are passionate, I think that if you're educated and you are surrounded by people who can help you and guide you towards what you want to do, it's possible. And so in this thing, of course, it's difficult, but I know that through my own weaknesses, for instance, in the beginning, I really did not know what the mining sector was all about. So I asked other people, and I had geologists tell me about the sector. I knocked on all the doors, and of course, there were many of you who say that for instance, as long as I didn't have the information I wanted, I continued to knock on the door until I had what I wanted. And so you have to have that kind of ambition. I'd like to tell all the young women in this room, you must have the passion. You have to have a clear vision of what you want to do. People around you that can help you get a good education, and as we say in English, the sky is the limit. In other words, même le ciel c'est pas un limite. Moi, je crois à ma capacité, et moi, je sais que si on peut s'éduquer, on peut faire.
Sure you did.
Thank you.
Sure you did. Mentorship is a key point. Mentor is necessary to help us think big. So, Rahama, right, did you have one or many? And was it a man or a woman?
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here to talk about my story and to really connect with the women who are here who want to see a better future, not only for themselves, but for their community members. Mentorship has been critical to my success. When I started Shea, I was in my early 20s. I did not have any money. I moved to Washington, D.C. after living in Mali for 2 years as a Peace Corps volunteer. And all I knew is that I wanted to help women in sub-Saharan Africa who produce shea butter, take their shea butter and turn it into products that could be connected to the global marketplace. I had no money. I had $6,000 to my name. I did not even know what a profit and loss statement was, what a balance sheet was. I had absolutely no business experience. And I call myself the 10-year overnight success, because it took me 10 years to get to a point where I was able to get my products into distribution, where I was able to go through my first round of private equity investment. And today, Shea, our investors are Ron Lauder of Estee Lauder, and Dick Parsons, the former head of Time Warner and Citigroup. So to get to that point, from being in my early 20s with no business experience, no networks, no connections, I had to do that through building very key strategic relationships and genuine relationships, and having people around me who were willing to support me and help me take my idea, take my vision, and bring it to the next level. And I was really fortunate to have both men and women mentor me, and individuals who saw something in me in my early 20s and took what they saw and helped support me so that I could get to the next level. And one of those mentors in the US, there's a program through the Small Business Administration, and I was able to get an advisor through that program, and they helped me with everything from creating my business plan, creating my financial statements, and all the resources and tools that I needed to be able to pitch to a private equity investor. But one of the things that I want to say to, and kind of what Ms. CAMARA was saying, is that don't wait for everything to be perfect before you start. Don't wait to understand, everything about business or have all of the answers. If you believe in something and if you are working on something that is important to you, just start. I oftentimes think that women, we wait. We wait. We wait for someone to give us permission. We wait for someone to tell us it's okay. We wait for someone to give us credibility. We cannot wait. The issues facing women requires us to take a stand, to use our voice, and use that voice so we can push our agenda forward. I just really want to say another thing about the perception of strong women. I was recently called an alpha female. And the person who called me the alpha female, I said, what does that mean? I really didn't know what that meant. And they said, well, you're very businesslike and aggressive, and you're like a man. And one of the things that I really think is important, we need to change the perception of what it means to be a woman. I can be a tough negotiator and be a woman. I can be someone who stands up for my beliefs, even if they're unpopular, and be a woman. I can wait to have children later on in life and be a woman. Yes. And I'm not an alpha anything. I am a woman, and I think that that's so important.
But how do we change this perception? It's very hard to change still.
Well, I think it's really important, first of all, for me, for someone who lives in the diaspora, I can see that quite often the image of African women we see there is the one that is helpless, is women raped, the poor African woman. And this is why it's really important to change the narrative. Today we have got a lot of young African people here back in the diaspora who are trying to, to put an end to that image by using, social media, the internet, and to show that, African woman is not helpless. She has been doing whatever we come today for decades, for years. All they need is resources, is to make sure that they have platform to do their work. But also really important not to come to think that we're going to teach them something. They already know so much that we don't have to teach them. What African women need is resources, but also is to try to convey that positive image that the African woman is strong, but also she's the one who runs the house, but also the country, like it or not. So for me, it's really important to try to show that image, and that's what one of the key thing in my organization we do is to convey that positive image of the African woman, to show that she's strong, but also she could do anything. And we're not here to teach them anything that they already know. So it's really nice to see my colleagues, doing fantastic work. And I think we need to show more of those images, but also more encourage the younger generation. Because quite often we go to conferences like this one, and we say we need to help the younger generation. But are we talking the walk? Are we really making sure that after the conference we go back home, we're trying to pull the younger generation to come? If they call us, are we available to help them out? And I think that's really important, not just to talk when they come to conferences, the youth, but it's important to bring them. When you go into a conference, bring a young person with you so that she or he could see what is happening. But also role model is really important. When I was growing up, I had a role model, which was Madam Aisha Ba, who used to be the Minister of Education. And she really used her position to educate over 200,000 of girls in Guinea. And that was really when girls started going to school. And for me, seeing a woman like that makes me that it is possible. So it's really important to have a role model that we could aspire to as well.
Absolutely. On va prendre quelques questions dans la salle, si vous voulez bien. Some questions, very short and precise, please. Questions courtes et précises. Oui. Madame. mademoiselle.
Bonjour, je suis Charlotte Libod.
My name is Charlotte Libod from the African Platform for the World. And in fact, we're talking about agriculture and the business sector in Africa. And I think one of the major obstacles, which is tied to the question of women leadership, are the obstacles that they meet in Africa here. And so I think that each person should take this very seriously and take on their responsibilities, as the panelists have said, that the women themselves must be confident in themselves and must be conscious of the real potential that exists in her. And in addition, they need the capital, of course, that the different African leaders can actually understand is necessary for this development. In other words, the development of Africa can only take place if we have the women leaders with us. Okay, what kind of obstacle are you talking about? Because you mentioned obstacles, but you didn't say what you meant. Well, to be very concrete and practical, I would like to talk about obstacles that concern ourselves. In other words, we have to believe in ourselves, and we have to have confidence in ourselves. And I would also speak of external obstacles, which are for instance, the men's attitude towards us. In other words, you have to be responsible and help us, accompany us, because in fact, a woman who is going to try to release her potential is unfortunately sometimes confronted with difficulties internally in her home, because the man or husband doesn't want her to develop her potential, and maybe doesn't want the children to be alone. And so I think that the men have to help us free our potential. I think sometimes it's a societal problem, because out of 10 women, there are at least 7 who are going to be by themselves, and this is often a source of suffering. They have to raise children by themselves, and so I think that the men really have to get involved. And so we would have lots of potential within us, and so we need the help and the assistance of men. But in addition to this, in terms of obstacles, we could also bring up the lack of solidarity among women, because sometimes there are very few of us who actually go on to positions of leadership, and sometimes we're jealous of each other. We don't help each other, and so there's this jealousy between women, and so that is also an obstacle.
To that, the lack of support
comment vous allez réagir à cela?
Lack of support from women.
Donc, est-ce qu'il
experienced that, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, lack of support from men, I wouldn't agree, because most of my mentors are men. You know, for me, I wouldn't even be able to name one single woman apart from my mom that I've been looking up to as a young woman. But if I'm here, if I'm doing everything I'm doing today, is because a lot of men were supportive. So I am against the fact when I hear all the time, when us women, we gather, we feel like we are victims, like men mistreat us so much. It's not everybody that mistreats women. But if they were mistreating us, it's for us to start teaching them. We have to let them know, not being offensive, defensive, but try to explain to them, because the role of a woman is to be the educator. We are the mothers, we are the sisters. If we approach them the right way, we could make them understand what we want. And they see already, women, a lot of women are doing great, wonderful things. That's the reason why we are today here. So yes, in some sense, there are some men that are a little bit difficult, but now, 21st century, men is really accompanying women. They are guiding us, they are helping us. That's something that I would like to say. We have to balance that. As far as lack of confidence, we tend to undersell ourselves. I always hear women saying, I can do this, or you know what, I think if I was about to do this, I would be able to do that. No, I believe you have to be sure of what you want. You have to have a clear path. You have to know, have a vision. You know, I knew from being a model, at one time I wanted to become a model, but at one point I wanted to integrate the mining sector. Now I breathe, I think as a miner, and I try to use the right word, like I become a miner. So I know I still have a lot to learn, but I wouldn't for the same reason think that I'm less important than the big companies, like the big CEOs that have been around for 50, 20 years. You know, they started out the same way. So you have to be confident in yourself and never undersell yourself.
But this comes back to education. I remember the story President Ouattara was telling yesterday. He was telling he was visiting northern province of Ivory Coast, and he met 2 children, and he asked the boy, what do you want to become later? The boy answered, I want to be president. And then the girl, same question, she answered, I want to be a nurse. Why not doctor? So that comes back, Mr. Engida, to education. How can we change the minds? How can we help girls think big?
Thank you. First of all, I sincerely admire the 4 sisters I have here who've actually broken through the chain, through their confidence, through the mentorship, etc.
Your microphone closer, please. Thanks.
Through the mentorship and other facilitating environments they had to live with. But the vast majority of women are not in that position today. The situation 70 years after the United Nations declared human rights and decided that men and women are equal in front of the law, in practice that is not happening. And that difficulty starts in the family, in the community, in a region, and in a country. For that environment to change, many, many things need to happen. And the first and most important one is a political commitment from leadership around the world. Today, the political leadership is no doubt dominated by men, in most cases by male chauvinist men. So we've got a lot of work to do there to change mindset. And secondly, the value system of societies need to change as well, that we need to recognize the importance of women in society, in leadership and in other fora. I don't think any one of us can claim that our mothers haven't actually contributed to our growth, our life, our well-being, etc. And yet, we don't, as my sister has said, walk the talk. The next step is for the education system to help women and girls achieve their potential. And currently, in most cases, the education system is failing us. Failing us because our children have been taken to school at the age of 5, and they come out of the system 21 years later, 18 years later, with some technical knowledge, but with backward attitudes about life, about girls, about women, about other cultures, etc. So the teaching, the education we need to do at school and lifelong must be holistic. That includes how to respect others, how to live democratically, etc., etc. For this reason, there is no expenditure in government's budget for education. It is an investment. And we need to invest in girls' education. We need to invest in women's emancipation.
And maybe we also need to recognize informal training, informal education, and make it valuable on the market. No, Rahama, right?
So what Yelen does is we work with a demographic of women who are in very rural, isolated communities in northern Ghana. And the soul of our business model is to engage these women in an integrative supply chain where they're creating value-added products, and we bring that product to market. In order to do that, we invest a tremendous amount in training. And this is one of the things that I have learned is even if you don't have formal education, you can still be trained in a trade. You can still use your local resources, and if you're able to have the proper ecosystem and the proper support systems, and of course myself, I'm in the US, I'm marketing these products, I'm getting them into stores, but you can use your local resource and connect that to the market, and local populations of women who struggle with poverty still have the potential to be business leaders. And I think that that's really important because usually when we think about business leaders, we think about someone in a suit, we think about a man. We don't think about a woman in a rural community in an isolated area, in northern Ghana. And I think that that needs to change. Kind of going off of what you were saying, Ms. Camara, I also think the voice is very important. We have to come to a point where women are comfortable to use their voice. Even if whatever you have to say is not perfect, or you're overthinking it, you're not confident, still use your voice. Nobody can take your voice from you, but nobody can also give you a voice. People can give you encouragement and help you, but you yourself have to develop your own voice and use that voice. No one is going to do that for you. And I think for me, when I first started Shea, I could never get in front of an audience and talk. I would be scared. And it wasn't until I started doing it and putting myself in environments where I had to speak in front of people that I started becoming more comfortable with it. And so I think it's really important. Sometimes we look at people and we see where they're at, and we don't see the steps that they took to get to where they are. And I feel like that's why it's so important to realize that you have all the resources and the tools if you give yourself the opportunity to use your voice and push forward. And I just want to end really quickly. We've been talking about mentorship and network building. There's a program called the African Women's Entrepreneurship Program. It's a U.S. State Department run program that's throughout Africa. And it's a great network of women entrepreneurs in almost every single country who run their own businesses, who network with each other, who mentor each other. So I really encourage the women here to look for the local chapter in their countries and get involved with AWEP. And the other thing, at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, President Obama announced two really important things. One was that the U.S. government is supporting 3 entrepreneurial centers in Africa, one in Zambia, one in Mali, and the other in Kenya. And these centers are going to be resources for women so that they can develop their entrepreneurial activities. And then the second thing is that $100 million has been committed through the Overseas Private Investment Corporation to support Goldman Sachs's 10,000 Women's program so that more women will have access to capital. So these are all resources that I encourage people to go online, research, look at how you can utilize those resources to benefit the work that you're doing.
In fact, you're just talking about empowering women, which is not just about making them CEOs, but giving them tools to improve their circumstances. And I have a question for you, Rainatou SOW, through your organization. What example did you see of cases where we really have empowered women in the community?
People always ask me that you do this report every year, so which country is doing best? And I'm afraid to say there is none who is doing best in all the issues women are facing. But you could get single countries that are doing quite well when you get to women political participation. Because this is an issue that is quite left out when it comes to women participation in decision making. I personally believe that women could be in business, which is really important because you are independent. But we need to be where the decisions are made. We need to be at the table where, when we talk about tomorrow, the price of the oil is going to go up or down. Women have a say. When you talk about education, about violence against women are there. And we could see a country like Rwanda, where you have got the first country in the world where you have got more than 63% of women in the parliament. But recently, we have a Senegal as well, where there are 42% women in the parliament. And those are countries that are aspiring us. And personally, everywhere I go, I try to, cite Rwanda and Senegal as an example. And we need to follow that as well. And really important, I'm going to touch a bit on the question the lady just said, engaging men working with gender equality. I'm going to say this in French. Je crois que c'est très, très important d'avoir le support des hommes.
I think it is very important to have the support of men when we're talking about the development of women. But this has got to begin in the home, because once the man has left the family, then there's not much you can do. And so often our parents will tell us that as a girl, you don't need to go to school because, this man is going to marry you later. And we say to boys, you got to go to school because you're going to have to be responsible for your family. So we got to begin with the family in order to show our children, the boys and the girls, that both of them are equal. They've both got to help in the housework. And they've got to go to school, and also the woman can also dream to be the president of the country. But if we're going to, when we ask them what they're going to do and the girl says, I want to be a nurse, it means that it's a real problem. It's because we have not encouraged her to dream. And you've got to have your dreams very highly. And so when we're talking about politics, we have imagined this is only a club for men. And so women have got to participate also, and they've got to have something to say. So if a man is well educated in the community, in the home and outside, he's going to respect women. He's not going to beat his wife. He's going to encourage his wife to have an important position. Thank you for this very deepness. And we're going to take some questions on the floor now.
Mademoiselle, madame, voilà. Une question très courte.
Very short questions. Good evening, everyone. I'm from Tunisia, and I represent the company in Tunisia. And I'd like to be very pragmatic in my viewpoint. We're speaking of difficulties, problems with men. So what are the different measures that are being taken so that women can go ahead and evolve in the professional environment? Because we know that we have lots of men in the business community, but I'd like to talk about some concrete examples. Are there, for instance, special hours for women who are pregnant? Have we thought about the possibility of having nurseries in different companies, and so that women are not obligated to choose between the role of a mother and the role of a businesswoman? Are there different laws in the different companies or rules against sexual harassment? And because this is one of the biggest problems that women are living through in the business environment and in life also. And also in the business community, we don't want to talk about scandals, and so we don't really have rules that are insisted upon. It's sometimes very difficult to prove that you are a victim of sexual harassment, and so sometimes you are obligated to even just leave a job because of these problems. Okay, do we have some kind of a practical advice that you might be able to give? Well, I think it's a problem. It's very frequent, not just in Africa, but in all countries, because I noticed that in a report we were talking about different companies that installed a system of having a nursery in the company, and they also saw that their production increased because of the nursery. And so I think that women, sometimes when they have to go back to their jobs, sometimes people, when they get married, women, when they get married and have children, they stop their jobs because they don't have enough time for their children. And so sometimes they stop their activity in the professional community. But have some countries, do they have very clear laws in order to give women their rights in terms of their jobs? Well, I think the problem in Africa is that we have lots of laws, but we don't implement them. In other words, we have fantastic laws. Sometimes, if you have really good laws, that's very nice, everything is provided for women, but once you start implementing those laws, then it's a different problem. And so this is why I'm saying that it is very important for us as young women, and also in terms of the civil society and the business community, in other words, the government must be accountable, because this, of course, would favor the real integration of women in the business community if those laws that exist are implemented. Another question in the room. I'm going to continue as long as I'm not told to stop. I'd like to hear the voice of women in the room. No, I did not mean to be discriminating. Yes, hello. My name is Rahama WRIGHT. A short question, please. I'm in the mining sector, and I'm also a businesswoman. And so my question is concerns the training and also the mentoring, because when you're a business person in your country, try to have positive images of women who are businesswomen and who come from different places. I see there are Ghanaian women, Kenyan women, Tunisian women, and so if they can give us their experience, which will allow us and give us courage here in Gabon, and to allow us to have access to to this information, and in addition to this forum, and in addition to the different sources of information on the internet, what could help us in order to encourage us to try to continue to be strong in business? Thank you.
Yeah, especially she's in the mining sector, so I think I'm better. All right. Merci pour cette question.
Thank you for that question. First of all, you are working in the mining sector. There are different associations of women in the mining sector, par exemple, Groupe International, and I am the co-founder of Women in Mining in Guinea. And so there are a lot of associations now that will help women in the mining sector in order to give us these mentoring programs and also to help us educate women so that you can know how to develop in this particular sector, because we know that it's mostly dominated by men. And so right now, there are lots of associations that can help you. So go ahead to the Women in Mining International or the Women in Mining in Guinea, and you can go ahead and contact us, and we will give you guidance. And even after this particular session, perhaps you could come and talk to me personally. Yes, thank you very much. I've been told that we're going to stop the session now, and so I have to stop the session. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.